My name is Graham Wheel and I work as Honorary Professor at the Ruhr University Bochum in Germany. The main focus of my research is how the battle to combat global warming can be won at the lowest cost. To do so, we have built a model based on IEA data which shows by country and sector the different sources of emissions and what has caused them to change since 2005. The conclusion is that whilst the EU Green Deal to cut emissions by 55% up to 2030 is admirable, it is even more important to establish strong collaboration with China and India and to help them cut their emissions at the fastest possible rate. Let me now take you through a few charts which gives you the reasons for this conclusion. In the first chart on the left, we see two things. China, the US and India account for exactly half of global emissions, with the EU in total representing less than 10%. In addition, we see that the transformation sector, mainly power generation, accounts also for 50% of global emissions. On the right-hand side, where the transformation emissions are allocated to each end-use sector, industry is found to be responsible for the largest share of emissions, a clue that it is in this sector that most effort must be made. It is next instructive to see what has caused emissions to change over the recent period from 2005. Unsurprisingly, China and India are responsible for most of the growth. The EU has reduced its emissions materially, but perhaps less well known, the US has also made good progress in this direction, despite the lack of strong policy measures. Higher power generation is the main factor lying behind emissions growth, but in the right-hand chart we see how renewables have substantially offset this factor. The IEA statistics have also enabled a valuable insight into the efficiency of power generation around the world. The left-hand chart shows that thermal electricity generation at a global level is 35% efficient, with a further 8% of input energy realized as useful heat. The EU does much better, with overall efficiency at 54%. China and the US have made substantial improvements over the recent period, increasing their generation efficiency by 5 to 6%. Lastly, I want to bring out the contribution from two factors driving emissions in strongly opposing directions: renewables and coal generation. The former has reduced global emissions by some 10%, with a good contribution from China, spearheaded by very strong growth in hydropower. But in the very same country, the strong rise of coal-fired power generation all but offset the valuable contribution from renewables. Whilst India and other countries in the world have also increased coal-fired generation, the EU and very significantly the US have significantly cut this form of power production. Let me conclude with 4 action points which emerge from this analysis. Most importantly, Europe should collaborate intensively with China and India, transferring all experience gained as it meets the challenge of the 55% reduction by 2030. The European Commission should urgently institutionalize this process. Second, since industry is the largest source of emissions, including the allocations from the transformation sector, comprehensive efforts should be made to improve recycling and to reduce the content of energy-intensive materials in vehicle and civil engineering construction. Again, knowledge transfer to Asia will be crucial. Thirdly, to reverse the trend of increased fuel use in the transport sector, besides electrification, increased car sharing and higher average loads in road freight must be achieved to reduce both the energy demand for motor vehicles and their production volume, which will then yield a double dividend for emissions. Lastly, renewables power is easily the most important instrument to reduce emissions, and it will additionally be needed for green hydrogen. Therefore, all countries should exploit fully their renewable sources at the maximum possible rate. I thank you for your interest and will be pleased to answer any questions you have. The full report can be obtained upon request by email.